ask you to introduce yourself and tell me what country you were in and the years.
Okay, my name is Audrey Huffman Reeser. I go by Audrey Huffman. And I was in Ghana from 1997 to 1999.
All right, very good. Where did you grow up?
Oklahoma City. Well, yes. My parents, we lived in Algeria for a few years. I was born in Tulsa, grew up in Tulsa, lived in Algeria for probably about 2 years, and then, but from like kindergarten, later kindergarten, all the way through high school, Oklahoma City.
Why in the world were you living in Algeria?
My dad was in the oil business and wanted to live overseas again because he had been in the Peace Corps.
He had been in the Peace Corps.
Yes, in Nigeria, and then we had lived in, I guess we lived in Houston and Tulsa, and he had wanted to move overseas, and so we lived in Algeria.
How did that affect you, leaving Oklahoma City or Tulsa and winding up in a strange place like Algeria?
I don't think I had, I mean, I was really young, so I don't think I had any, I didn't have any, that's just, it was not anything.
So you weren't arrested away from your friends?
No, I was like 3 years old.
Oh.
So I was little,
okay.
Very little. And I probably taken away from family, but we would come home at Christmas to see family.
Mm-hmm.
And I think maybe in the summer we came home. I don't remember. Maybe in the summer we came home. I know my dad got sick, and he was in the hospital in Paris for a long time, and we came back home for a little while. But I mean, I didn't have any friends, so it was not really any. It was just normal to me.
How long did you live in Algeria?
About 2 years. Probably about 2 years.
Did you have Algerian friends?
We did not. I had friends in Algeria, but we lived in a compound that for all the oil field workers, and it was an international compound, but I wouldn't say that there were Algerians. I had a little friend who was French, and there was a kid in my little school from China, and I went to like a little preschool, and it was like just international kids, but there were only maybe like 6 or 7, probably 7 or 8 kids in the class, and there were some Jamaicans there.
Was it fun?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I didn't know any different, so it was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think that's great that you had that experience.
Yeah, it was neat.
Unlike people who grew up in Muskogee and segregated Muskogee.
Right.
Everybody was the same.
Right.
Looked the same.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, tell me a little bit about your dad and his experience in the Peace Corps. Now, we've already recorded him, so we don't need a lot, but we need a little.
My dad was in the Peace Corps in Nigeria. I think it's 66 to 69.
Mm-hmm.
And he actually dropped out of college to go to Peace Corps. He didn't finish his degree. He was in Nigeria, and he did surveying, and obviously, like, I grew up knowing about that, and we watched a lot of slides that pictures that he'd taken, and we had things in the house that were from Nigeria, and he and my mom talked about it a lot. My mom left Oklahoma and flew to Nigeria, having never been overseas, and got married to my dad.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was certainly something that I knew about as a kid. But I mean, I wasn't there in Nigeria. I don't know what he talked a lot about it, his experience, and it was certainly an influence for me. I wanted to go. I learned about it and wanted to do it for my dad.
Do you know if there was a certain age that you started thinking along those lines more seriously and maybe not just rolling your eyes, oh, here he goes again?
No, there was a lot of that.
Rolling your eyes?
There's a lot of rolling. Just lots of stories over and over again.
Yeah.
No, but the stories were fun and interesting. I think I was just probably more interested not in his stories so much, but just living in a different culture. And I always knew I was going to go. I don't it was like it was expected that I go to college, and it was not ever like that was never, oh, I should go to college. It was just I'm going to college. And I think it was not expected that I go to Peace Corps by any means, but I don't remember a time where I didn't want to do it. I mean, I remember in high school wanting to do it. And then I got more serious about it in college. And I was engaged to be married and ended up having to, I was getting ready to graduate. And
Where were
from
you?
OU.
From OU?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I knew that I wanted to do it and knew that I needed to be serious about it. And the fiance his parents were not really very supportive of him doing it. And so I broke up with him. So certainly that would have been my junior year of college. So I certainly was more serious I got very serious about it. I mean, I ended a very important relationship in order to do it.
That's quite something.
It was, yeah, it was. I was very sad.
Have you met him since that time?
Yeah, oh, sure, yes. Uh-huh.
Are you friends?
No, I wouldn't. We're not friends, but we don't. I mean, if I see him, he works downtown. But if I see him, we say hello and visit and give each other a hug, and we both have a.
But he understood and you understood.
No,
right?
I wouldn't say that. No, it was
what
not.
What would you say?
I wouldn't say he understood, and I wouldn't say I understood. It was just a very difficult time. Just knowing I wanted to do that, knowing I didn't want to give that up to get married.
I characterized my own choice to take that test that night as 51-49.
Mm-hmm.
What was it for you?
It was 100.
It was 100. You were going.
I was
and there
going.
Was no doubt.
No doubt. And I remember when our first date, I told him that's what I was going to do. I was a sophomore in college, and I told him that's what I was going to do, and he knew from the beginning. And then it started to get, it was the end of my junior year, beginning of my senior year, and I certainly started thinking about, this is something I need to do and apply for, and I probably didn't handle it in the best way, because maybe there would have been an opportunity to do both, like to stay with him and also go to Peace Corps, but I knew I was going to Peace Corps, and I knew that I wasn't going to give that up to get married. And
if you joined the Peace Corps after you got married, that could lead to a divorce.
Well, no, you can't go. Like, you can't, unless he wants. I mean, certainly I guess I could have gone being married, but I didn't want to be married and be away from my spouse for 2 years. Sure. That didn't make sense.
Yeah.
But not a whole lot makes sense when you're 21 years old. And it was certainly like, there could have been a better way to handle it. And there could have been, but I knew he talked about going, but his parents were not supportive of him doing that. And,
of you doing that.
No, they were fine if I did it. They were not supportive of him doing it.
Oh.
Yeah, that was not something that they wanted for him, although he was very interested in doing it. And it just...
Did they dissuade him?
I'm sure they did. I mean, I wasn't there for those conversations, but I don't know if they dissuaded him so much as there's just very complex dynamics. I just don't think they were very supportive. In fact, I know they were not supportive.
Yeah.
And they were not very supportive. And he was going through some change where he was trying to decide what he wanted to major in, and his parents certainly had influence on that, and he wanted to do one thing, but his parents wanted him to do the other thing, and he chose what his parents wanted, and those were choices for me that I probably didn't want to be married to somebody who, even though I love the person dearly, didn't want to be married to somebody whose parents were kind of directing their life.
Oh, yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
Now, when you were OU, I would assume that Peace Corps wasn't much of a thing.
No.
People were not going around talking about Peace Corps, were
No,
they?
nobody was talking about Peace Corps. I'm sure somebody once came with a booth. I was not, I worked in college, so I didn't have a whole lot of free time. So once I went to school, I went home and then went to work. So,
So you didn't have friends at OU who were also interested?
no, I had no friends who were
No
interested.
friends?
Not one friend. No, I always knew I was going to do it.
Did you ever go to any government teacher or anything like
No.
that, prof,
No,
to see what they thought?
no, I didn't
No.
care. I knew I was going to do it. I'm a pretty opinionated person, and I knew I was going to do it. I didn't need to go talk to anybody about it. I mean, I had my dad. And my dad had a friend, Paul Willis, he was in Peace Corps with, who lived in Iowa. And we saw them every once in a while. And so, I knew him. But I didn't need to go talk to anybody about it because I had my dad. My dad talked about it plenty. I mean, it was a very common topic of conversation in our household.
If you had decided not to join the Peace Corps, what effect would that have had on your dad, do you think?
None.
None?
I don't think he would
She
have.
just made her decision?
No, my parents were.
Too bad.
Yeah, I don't think, I mean, my dad didn't discourage me and he didn't encourage me. I mean, my dad worked overseas, so he wasn't really home very much, especially
When you're
my whole life.
your whole life? No?
He was home probably until I was about 12, and he was in the oil business, so it was very boom and bust kind of business. And when I was about 12 or 13, he started working in Houston or Midland, either one of those places, and then he also worked overseas. So he wasn't necessarily there that much.
Okay.
I mean, I talked to him on the phone, but he wasn't in the house. But my parents were not. My parents were very. They did not discourage me to do anything or encourage me to do anything. That left those choices up to me. Those are always I was very free to make whatever choices I wanted to make for me. And there was no like, oh, you should do this or you should do that or you shouldn't do this or you shouldn't do that. It was just very much my choice.
Okay. Did you ever talk to anybody who had been in the Peace Corps?
No.
Did you want to?
No, I didn't
You
care.
did-
I just was going to go do it.
That just sounds hard-headed to me.
Well, it's
now.
not hard-headed. It's
I mean, wouldn't you want to find out what somebody who'd already done it had gone
I had
through?
my dad.
Yeah, you do. That's true.
I don't-
But that's just one.
I know, but I didn't really. There's one. No, I never thought about it because I just knew that's what I knew that's what I wanted to do.
Okay.
And I'd lived in Algeria, so I'd lived in a different culture, and even as a little kid, I enjoyed that. It was interesting to meet different people in elementary, junior high, and high school. If there were ever kids who came to school who didn't speak English, they gave those kids to me, and I helped teach them English, and I was always friends with the kids from different cultures.
Was that because just the kind of person you are, or were you thinking about Peace Corps even then?
No, I think it's the person I am. I was pretty smart kid, and I was pretty responsible, and I was pretty. I'm sure I showed leadership skills from a very early age.
You cared about people.
And I cared about people, and I was kind to people. I was a nice kid, and I didn't make fun of kids, and I offered to help. But I mean, I had friends from Afghanistan, Thailand, Vietnam, Russia.
You mean at OU? You didn't?
No. Elementary, junior high, and high school.
Oh.
No.
Huh.
I didn't have many friends at OU because I worked. I went to class. And I had to, my parents didn't have a lot of money, so I had to put myself through college, and so I worked.
Were there any jobs that you worked that you really liked? Or was
In
it
college,
just money?
I waited tables. I liked waiting tables. I was I worked at the Limited when I first started college, and that was okay. I liked clothes. And then my younger brother worked at Chili's in Oklahoma City, and I got a job being a hostess, and then I started waiting tables, and I enjoyed it. I liked talking to people. I liked interacting with people.
Yeah.
I liked that the job was done at the end of the day, and you could go home. I liked the money. The money was great.
Uh-huh.
So I didn't spend a whole lot of time at OU socializing. I went to class, and then I studied, and then I worked.
What did you major in?
International business with a minor in finance and Spanish.
Did you major in international business because you thought that would be handy in the Peace Corps?
No. I majored in international business. I started out as an engineer, and I was going to go to med school, and I didn't like, I was a smart kid, but I was also a very social kid, which was a very odd combination.
Yeah.
As most of the super social kids in high school were not they're not
The brains.
good, not the brains, but there's very smart kids who were, but it was generally more introverted kids who got good grades, and I was valedictorian in my high school, and so I did real well in high school, but I was very, very social.
What high school?
Putnam City High School.
Okay.
And I was surrounded by introverts, and I just didn't like that. It was just uncomfortable for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I picked a major that I didn't know anything about, which was business. I knew nothing about business. I've always liked international things. So I picked international business. There was not a whole lot of thought that went into it. I was trying to decide whether I wanted to go to med school or law school. I think that's when you grow up middle class, those are the two things you do that that tell you you're supposed to be successful. You're either a doctor or a lawyer.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very middle class upbringing. So I knew that I was going to do one of those, and so I got out of engineering, and I was like, well, I guess I'm not going to be a doctor, so I guess I'll be a lawyer. But I'm going to go to Peace Corps first and do that. And so I really just wanted out of college, and I just wanted to go to the Peace Corps.
Okay. So when did you apply?
I applied sometime during my senior year. And it was probably either late summer or early fall of my senior year. Like late summer prior to my senior year.
Now, the application process has changed somewhat over the years, as I realize now through these interviews. What was it like? What was your application process like?
It was a paper application. And I think I called Dallas, and somebody in Dallas mailed me an application. I think Peace Corps was coming to OU, but I had to work, so it was in the evening, and I couldn't go because I worked. And so it was a multi-page application that I filled out by hand, and they wanted references, I'm sure. And I really do not remember who my references were. Mm-hmm. I think I used probably a high school teacher. I think I had an ecology and environmental quality class, and I think I used that professor as a reference. And I'm sure I used one of my business professors as a reference, but I don't remember, honestly.
Did the FBI check you out?
I'm sure they did, but I don't know.
They did me.
I don't remember.
My parents would tell me that they understood that there were FBI agents in our neighborhood.
Oh.
And I thought, well, what? The FBI is after me?
Yeah, no, I don't think so. I know I had applied for a internship with the CIA, and
interesting.
And I was told by Peace Corps I could do one or the other, but if I took the CIA internship, I wouldn't be able to do Peace Corps for 10 years.
For 10 years?
Yes. So I did not take, because there's a common, in foreign countries, it is a common thought that Peace Corps volunteers are CIA.
Oh, yeah, that's
so
right. Yes.
They don't want that.
That's right.
They don't want that You know,
Yeah.
you're not CIA, obviously. You're far from it. But people are very suspect about why these Americans are coming and living in their little village. And so I just didn't do anything with the CIA internship.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think I had an interview. I mean, I know I had an interview. I had to drive to Dallas, and my dad was home, and I know I drove his. He had a Ford Expedition, and I drove maybe he had a Ford Explorer. I think he had a Ford Explorer, and I drove that to Dallas. And I know I got the flu on the way home, and I got really, really sick on the way home.
Ooh.
And I had the interview was a few hours long.
Were you getting sick during the interview?
Yeah, so I had the flu. I got the
awful.
flu. Yeah,
So,
I got the flu.
have you thought about what impact that might have had on you at the time in the interview, that you were actually feeling sick?
None. I just powered through it. Had no impact on me.
Okay, so you didn't ever consider telling the recruiter that,
No.
look, I'm ill, I
No.
need to leave.
That would not be professional. I would not do that. I've always been a pretty serious person, so I would not tell somebody that. I would just
Okay.
power through and do it, because that's what you
And you
do.
said it was 3 hours?
It was probably 2 or 3 hours.
That's
It was long.
a long
It was a
interview.
long interview. They asked me questions about, it was long. Maybe not 3, maybe 2. One of the questions they asked was if I was in a room with white walls and I had to be trapped in there, would I get bored? I was like, no. They were like, what would you do? And I was like, I'd count different colors in the paint. Or I'd look at the floor. I'd figure out something to do. I'd take a nap.
Yeah,
You know?
sure.
That's really the only question I remember
Yeah,
from that
of
interview.
that whole thing?
I remember what I wore, but I don't remember the interview.
I'm also interested in, you must have known at this time that there are broad areas that the Peace Corps is interested in. Education, community development, agriculture. Did you think that you could fit into one of those, or did you want to fit into one
Well, I
of
was a
those?
business major, and business was something that the Peace Corps was starting to do, particularly
Business
in,
development?
Yes.
Yes.
Particularly in Eastern Bloc countries in Europe, but I had no interest in going to Eastern Bloc countries in Europe.
Why?
I wanted to go to Africa.
Okay.
And I told them, I was like, I want to go to Africa. And my dad was a Peace Corps volunteer, and so.
In Africa?
In Africa. Yeah. And I said, that's where I want to go. And they said, well, okay, you might not get that choice. And I said, well, that's what I'm going to do. That's what I want to go do. And that's what I want to be offered.
Did you leave them with the impression that if you don't give me an African country, I'm not going?
I don't know if it was that strong. But I left them with the impression that that's what I wanted to do. But that I'm sure I was very tactful about it and said I would look at other things, but that's really what I wanted to do.
Now, there are various countries in Africa.
I
Were
didn't
you
care.
in East or West?
I was really more interested in sub-Saharan Africa, but other than that, I didn't care.
Okay.
And
Now-
they told me not to be. I think they told me not to be so picky, and I said, well, that it's very competitive and process, and only 1 in 7 people get in, and things like that.
That's what they told you?
That's what they told me. And
That sounds like a lie to me.
well, I don't know.
1 of 7.
I know a lot of people who didn't get in.
Really?
Oh yeah, I've known lots of people who haven't gotten in. But I didn't know anybody then. But it was certainly a competitive process. I think the competition doesn't have so much to do with grades or performance in school, but mental health and physical health, which were certainly very important.
Very important.
And you have to want to do it and want to be there and be able to be a pretty flexible person. Because those people who were not flexible were not particularly very successful.
Now, what about language?
What about it?
Well, what language were they, you were going to have to learn one.
Well, I was a minor in Spanish, and so they said, you don't want to go, you have a minor in Spanish, you don't want to go to South America. And I said, no, I want to go to Africa. And they said, why didn't you learn French? And I said, because I learned Spanish, and I'd taken Latin in high school, and had done really, really well in Latin, had won some state competitions in Latin in high school, and so so then I just did Spanish because Latin wasn't a very pragmatic language, and I'm a pretty pragmatic person. I was a business major, even though like I'm not particularly interested in it, but Spanish is useful, so I did Spanish, and I do remember them asking me, well, you should just go to South America. And I'm like, well, I don't want to go to South America. I want to go to Africa. So give me some Africa choices. That's what I want.
So you were unequivocal about that.
Yes.
I don't want to go to South
I was
America.
I said I don't want to go. But you can give me some options, but most people don't get options. But I was told that I was going to get options because I was second generation Peace Corps, so I was going to get some options. But I said, they told me that I needed to be more open-minded about where I wanted to go, and I just said, well, I really want to go to Africa. That's really what I want to do.
Did you get out a map of Africa and start looking around and saying, I'll go here and here and here?
No.
No? Just Africa?
I just said sub-Saharan Africa.
Oh, sub-Saharan. Okay. All right. So, I guess it went pretty well then, the interview, even though you didn't feel well. It went well.
I guess it went well. I mean, I got a call. The call was probably a few months later, and I got a call.
A few months. I was going to ask that. Yeah.
A few months later, and I got a call.
Were you a little worried after a few months? Or did they tell you it might be a few months?
I don't remember being worried. I mean, I was in college, and I was working, so I was a very busy person. And there's
you didn't have time to stew on it.
No, and I'm not gonna stew on. There's nothing I can do about it. I've done the interview. I've done what I can do, and that's all I can do. So, and certainly, if I didn't get to do that, there were other options. I could have done AmeriCorps or Teach for America, all different kinds of things. There was a bunch of different options I could do.
Was Vista around at that time?
Yes, I think so. I think it was more AmeriCorps Vista.
AmeriCorps.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I hadn't applied to any of that.
Yeah.
But I was certainly busy with school and busy with life and working, and so I just didn't worry about it.
When did you graduate?
May of 1997.
Okay. May of 97. And when were you accepted into the Peace Corps?
I don't remember. Sometime before graduation, I think.
Oh, so it was a nice graduation present.
It was before graduation. I want to say it was sometime like in December of 96 or January of 97. And I got a call, and they said, you've been accepted, and we're going to give you some choices. And the choices were Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Uruguay, Dominican Republic, Cape Verde, and Ghana. And it was a no-brainer.
Gosh, there's only one.
No, Cape Verde is sub-Saharan. It's on the west coast of West Africa.
I don't know it.
Yeah. There used to be a flight from Joburg, or from Atlanta to Joburg, and it used to refuel in Cape Verde. But it's just these little tiny volcanic islands. They're little tiny islands off the coast of West Africa.
So that didn't appeal to you at all?
No, a little bit, but I mean, Ghana was a no-brainer for me. That was.
What about Ghana made it so desirable?
It's sub-Saharan Africa. One of the first place Peace Corps went in Africa, and Ghana has certainly a rich cultural history, and that was just a no-brainer. They spoke English.
Most people speak English there?
No. I wouldn't say most people, no. But English is the official language of Ghana. We were going to have to learn a local language, but English was but I mean, it's just Ghana had a very rich history, and I knew, that was just a no-brainer. I was not going to go to Kazakhstan or Uzbekistan. I had no interest in that. Dominican Republic was hard to pass up. Paraguay, that was a hard thing, but I did not want a Western experience, really.
Mm-hmm.
I knew I wanted an African experience, and I knew that's what I wanted to do, and so it was easy.
Did you realize at the time when they gave you these options, that you could just select one and that's where you'd go, or you select it and they mull it over and they say, well, I don't know.
No, I knew they gave me the choices, and whatever I picked was where I was going to go. Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
I was there was another guy in my Peace Corps group. His dad was also a Peace Corps volunteer, and so he got choices as well, but no one else in our group got any choice. They just got told, this is where you're going. And
I think that's pretty neat.
Yeah, it was neat.
That they gave you that because
yeah.
you were second generation.
Yeah.
I'd never heard that before.
Yeah.
Good.
So, and he got choices too, and it was an easy choice.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't, it was between Dominican Republic and Ghana, and I really thought about it, and I was like, I mean, Dominican Republic is certainly very deserving of help and wonderful, but it's the Caribbean, it's easy to get home, it's easy to leave, it's Western, and I don't want that. I want Sub-Saharan African.
Did you do any research before you made your final choice on the two countries?
No.
Just to see what's going on there?
Nope. I just said, so I'll take Ghana. That's Sub-Saharan Africa. So you gave me a choice. I asked for Sub-Saharan Africa, and you gave me a choice, and I got two Sub-Saharan African places. So I picked the one. I didn't want to be on an island, and I just was very interested in Ghana, so I picked it.
Okay. So let's see then. When were you supposed to take off?
September of 1997.
September of 97. Mm-hmm. And where was your plane going?
To Accra.
You weren't going to meet with a group in the
U.S.
yes,
we
first?
did. We did. We had a
Tell me about that.
We had a staging, and I went to the airport with my grandparents and my parents and my brothers, and I was very, very close with I cried the whole time, and I felt like I had made a mistake, and I was very close with all my grandparents, but particularly close with my maternal grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember she wore a silver, she had this little raincoat, it was silver, and she wore that. And I just cried the whole time. I cried and cried and cried and cried and cried and cried. I couldn't quit crying, and it was actually the last time I saw my grandma alive.
Oh my.
And I was my grandmother was my person.
Yeah.
And I just cried and cried and cried, and I got on the plane, and we flew to maybe St. Louis, and then in St. Louis I got on another plane, and I heard this girl talking to her person. She was crying, and she was talking to the person next to her about she was going to Peace Corps, and I whipped around and I said, "Are you going to Peace Corps?" And she looked at me kind of stunned, and she said, "Yeah, I am." And I said, "I'm going to Peace Corps too. Are you going to Ghana?" Because again, I'm a pretty social person. And she said yes, and she looked at me like I was crazy. And I told the lady next to her, I said, "Will you sit in my seat so I can sit and talk to her?"
Oh, absolutely.
And so I sat, and this person that I met on the plane thought I was nuts. And she's one of my best friends today. In fact, I talked with her on the phone on Saturday. She's in Bahrain right now. She's been a teacher in Saudi Arabia for many years, but she's going to come back to the States for a little while. But anyway, I just plopped myself down next to her, and we visited, and then we went to D.C., and there was a whole group of us.
How many? About?
In our class, there were 44, but there were some other people who were also going in that staging, but I don't remember what countries they were from or where they were going.
But there were 44 going.
There were 44 of us,
Ghana.
Yes, going to Ghana.
Okay.
And
they're from all over, I'm sure.
All over.
Yeah.
No one else from Oklahoma. They were mainly from East Coast and West Coast. And there were a few Midwesterners, but most people were from the coasts. Lots of people from California, lots of people from New York, lots of people from DC, but not, or, you know, East, I don't want to say DC, that's not right, but not very many Midwesterners or Southerners.
And how many, how long were you in DC, and what did you do in DC?
We were there, I don't remember, maybe 2 or 3 nights.
Oh, not a big deal at all?
No, not long, no, like maybe 2 nights. And I had a roommate who was from Appleton, Wisconsin. And she was also going to Ghana, and she was going to do forestry. They had forestry, water sanitation, youth development, and business development. And yeah, those are the groups.
Yeah.
And I don't remember. I remember they said it was very rude, and I can't imagine people doing that now, but they asked any of us if any of the women had sex since their last period, we have to get up and go take a pregnancy test. And of course, I think that the people from the
I hope they wouldn't do that.
They did that. It was horrible. That's abusive. It's not okay.
No.
It's not okay. And certainly most women did not get up. There were some who did, but you know, that puts you at a health risk, obviously.
Yeah.
But it was terrible. It was just abusive.
Mm-hmm.
And we got a bunch of shots, and then we got on a plane.
Yeah. And you wound up in Accra?
Accra.
Accra.
We flew from DC to Lagos. I don't remember. Maybe we may have gone someplace in Europe first, but I don't remember.
It wasn't important.
No,
wherever
we went. No, I mean,
Yeah.
It was just a layover. I honestly don't remember, but I do remember we landed in Lagos, and then we flew from Lagos to Accra.
Okay. And where is Accra located from Lagos? Is that a long distance? Hundreds of miles?
Hundreds of miles, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, Accra's on the coast, and Lagos, but it's up. I don't.
Were you in the mountains?
No. Lagos is on the coast as well, but they're both coastal African towns.
Okay.
Cities. Yeah.
All right.
I mean, it was probably maybe an hour and a half flight.
Okay.
But we didn't get off the plane. We stayed on the plane. It was a flight, wherever it was coming from, it was stopping in Lagos first and then going to Accra.
You must have been an excited bunch of
I think we were all very
people.
excited. We were all very excited.
Yeah. And when you got to Accra, that was going to be where you trained?
No.
No. All right.
We stayed in Accra, I think, 3 nights maybe. We got there the first night, and we got off the plane, and somebody took us to a local bar called Mr. Rees. So Mr. and then Rees, R-E-E-S, but it was a kind of a play on words.
Uh-huh.
And there were a bunch of Peace Corps volunteers who were there, who met us there, and they were eating chicken's feet, and we were like freaking out, like, oh my God.
Chicken feet?
Chicken feet. They were eating chicken feet.
I don't think I've ever had the pleasure.
The pleasure.
Yeah.
They were eating chicken's feet, and there was everybody was talking. We were all very clean, and the volunteers in Ghana were not very clean, and we all had pretty Western clothes on, and I don't think they did. And we were at this bar, and I think we were all kind of shell shocked. And I remember some Ghanaians were asking us about Tupac and Biggie Smalls. And was Tupac really dead? And then, people were saying, "Oh, I'm from here and I'm from here." And there was one guy who was getting ready to fly out, and he was from Oklahoma. His name was Steve Reed. I think you've interviewed Steve, maybe?
Oh, yes, of course.
So,
I know him pretty well.
So Steve was there, and we got introduced, and he was like, "Well, I'm leaving tonight." And I said, "Oh, well, I'm obviously getting here, and he had been a teacher, and I gave him on a notebook paper, gave him my dad's name and address, and I said, well, call my dad when you get there. He was a Peace Corps volunteer. I'm sure he
They
loved
live
it.
pretty close together.
They live about, Steve and Barb live across the street and about 4 houses down.
Yeah, right.
But he didn't live there, obviously, at the time. And he ended up contacting my parents and went to dinner with my parents.
No, that's neat.
So it was nice
Really
to meet
neat.
somebody from
Yeah.
Oklahoma. And
But you didn't have really any time to debrief Steve, did you?
on
Peace Corps.
no, we were at a bar. No.
Well, you can debrief anywhere.
Well, no, I think we just said hi.
Oh.
Just hi, I'm Audrey, I'm from Oklahoma. Oh, where are you from? Oh, I'm from Oklahoma. I think he'd
yeah.
gone to McGinnis High School maybe, and he was older than me, so, and then he was getting ready to go on a plane, so.
Yeah, okay.
And there was not much debriefing. There was just people talking, and they were eating chicken feet to freak us out. And it worked. I think
You
we were
mean
pretty
you think
freaked
they
out.
ordered that because they knew you were coming and they wanted to freak you out?
Yeah, that was a common thing. Yes, yeah, and if we did that to the next group. I didn't. I stayed in my village. I did not travel to Accra very much. I really enjoyed being in my village, but I was not very social with Peace Corps volunteers. I was somewhat social, but not, I was not going to Accra all the time. So,
Yeah.
but that was a common thing that volunteers did every year when there were new people coming in. They called them the new meat.
Can you describe what they looked like or tasted like? I've never even heard of
I
that.
don't really remember because I was probably too drunk when I did it. Because it was disgusting, but you just kind of chewed on them.
You just had what?
You chewed them, and it was gross. But we did.
Did they look like chicken?
Yeah,
feet?
it looks like chicken's foot. Yeah. They'd just been deep fried, but no batter, just cooked. And it looked like a chicken's foot with claws, and it was like a chicken's foot. And what people did there is they chewed them, and they chewed the foot, and then they got whatever was, I don't know if it's marrow, I don't know if that's in but whatever is in the blood, leftover blood in the foot, they sucked that out to eat.
Now, they considered this a delicacy, didn't they?
I wouldn't call it a delicacy. No, I wouldn't call it a delicacy. It was like a snack. It was not a delicacy. It was just something you purchase on the side of the street.
Well, in the Philippines, you could buy eggs out on the street, and there would be a duck embryo inside, and you drink that, and that was considered a delicacy. Yeah.
No, chicken's feet were just a snack, a bar food snack.
Okay.
Yeah, just a bar food snack.
So you were there for just 3 days?
We were. I really don't remember. I know we did this thing called a Craw Quest, which we went and we met the people who are our APCDs who are gonna be our bosses, and we went. We had dinners together and we started eating Ghanaian food, which it was horrible. I did not like it.
Give me some idea. I have no idea what Ghanaian food is.
Well, I like it now, but I didn't like it. I didn't like it there.
Was it rice?
No. There were some rice, but rice was pretty expensive. It's called fufu, and it is a boiled. Well, there's different kinds. Where the kind we had was boiled plantain and cassava, that's then pounded, and then it turns into kind of this big gelatinous dough thing. And then you put a soup on top of it, and then you pick it with your fingers and you pull it off, and it's real sticky, and then you dip it in the soup, and then you swallow it whole. You can't chew it because it's too sticky.
And they have that how often?
Every day.
Every day?
Every day.
Wow. Called what?
Fufu.
Fufu. Huh.
And then, but there's different kinds of fufu
Yeah.
depending on where you live in the country. And so the South on the coast, they did a plantain fufu. I lived in the middle of the country, kind of more north. I was not in the north, but I was in the middle, and the north of the country was not far from me, and they did more of a cassava and yam, and it was.
That would be a little better, I think.
It was better, but it was this. It would just, you don't taste it really. I just like the consistency better. I'm not a big plantain person,
So
and plantains are a big thing in Ghana. And
Were you thinking it to yourself at this time? Uh-oh.
Yes. Yes.
I can't do 2 years of this.
Yeah, I was thinking I can't do 2 years. This food is terrible. This is awful.
But you don't want to insult them by saying, I'm not eating that crap.
No, I know. We ate a little bit. Lots of people loved it. I didn't like it. And I didn't have probably at the time the most diverse food palette that had ever existed. But I ate it, and I was starving for the first few days. I was starving really all through training. And we went on this Accra Quest thing, which they gave us what do you call it? I can't think of the word. Like where you go have to find things. Like a scavenger
hunt. Yeah.
Like a scavenger hunt. And it was to teach, and you were supposed to take public transportation and not take a taxi. And I had a partner, don't remember who my partner was. I cannot remember that to save my life. Some of our group, we get together once a year, once every couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
And we were talking about it not too long ago, and I did not remember who my partner, I can't remember. I don't remember.
Nobody else did either?
No, not that nobody, I don't know. I don't remember who my partner was.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't really remember doing it, but I know we did it. And I know we took a taxi because I was like, I don't want to get on that public transportation. That's really scary. And we're taking a taxi. And it was certainly a big culture shock. And we stayed in a hotel that was oftentimes had prostitutes that stayed in it. And we had to walk from this hotel over this open sewage to get to the Peace Corps office.
Yeah.
And I was just like, what in the world have I done? What have I gotten myself into? This is horrible. This can't be what this is like. And then they drove us to Salt Pond, which is a town on the coast where we did our training. And it's near Cape Coast. And Cape Coast is one of the places, it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site where there's a slave castle where they sent slaves.
I'm going to have to look that up.
They sent slaves.
Salt Pond?
Salt Pond. Salt Pond is a small town near Cape Coast. But Cape Coast is the place where is the slave castle. There's one at Cape Coast and Elmina along the coast, and they would send slaves from the coast. Well, they got slaves from all over Ghana and all over West Africa, but they would send them off to either England or the New World from there. But Salt Pond was this dumpy little town on the coast, and we had this little compound, and we went there, and we had, mass-produced Ghanaian food every day, and the only thing I really ate was breakfast food, because it was like porridge and things like that. But I mean, lots of dried fish, which I didn't really like, and the food was just horrible.
How many?
It was very depressing.
How many were you there?
44.
44.
Mm-hmm.
And how long were you there in your training?
9 weeks, maybe.
Okay, substantial amount of time.
9 weeks.
All right, and you were getting this grub every day.
It was like cafeteria Ghanaian food, which is a thing that shouldn't exist, ever. It was terrible.
I'm sure it must have been one of the most popular topics of conversation. Your food.
No, some people really liked it. I mean, there were some very cosmopolitan people in our group who had traveled a lot, and lived in big cities and tried all different kinds of food, and they were like really into it. I was not.
Yeah.
And it was not good. The food was terrible. It was bad. No, I don't really remember talking about it. I just remember being very homesick and like, what in the world have I done? And
So were you seriously thinking at this point, I've made a mistake?
no. I mean, I thought, I didn't think I made a mistake. I don't think I thought I made a mistake. I think I thought, what have I gotten myself into? But I mean, I don't quit. I'm not a quitter, so that was never an option. And
2 years is a long time, and you're looking at this food here.
well, but I mean, that was, I was committed to doing it. I signed up and I was going to do it. And there was, the people in my group were certainly a lot wilder than I was. Not a very wild kid, and they were, they were from bigger cities and pretty wild, and there was lots of drinking and lots of going out to the bar every night and people getting really, really drunk. And that wasn't for me, and so that was really, it was a very difficult time. It was really hard.
Let me ask this. In my training group, we were told from the beginning that some of us might get deselected. That's a word I'd never even heard before. But they said that means you'll be sent home. And just want to let you know. Was that a thing where you were?
I don't remember.
I don't think it was. Or
I don't remember. But we had like language class and cultural class, and I just don't remember. I don't remember.
So anyway, it wasn't any kind of threat hanging
Well,
over
it might have
anybody's head.
been, because I mean, we were all really concerned about how we were doing, particularly in our language class, and I was always very good at language. I was like the Latin 3 state champion, so I was good in language.
Oh,
I
that's
did really
good.
well in language in college, and so we get there to do our local language, and I was just struggling, and I hadn't really ever struggled with anything, and I was really struggling with the language and really struggling understanding it, and I was very depressed. I was very sad. I was homesick. I didn't like.
Gosh.
It was not, the first 4 weeks were not fun. There was this beautiful beach, but people use the beach as a toilet. And, you'd go out and walk on the beach, and people are using the beach as a toilet. And there was sewage everywhere. I mean, it's sub-Saharan Africa. I had a.
Did you have sewage where you lived? Did you have a toilet?
We had toilets.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had toilets, but there was open sewage that flowed out of the town into the ocean.
Sure.
And I'd just never seen anything like that before. And the food was terrible, and the people were very different. I mean, I wore like a button-up shirt, and my mom made me little button-up dresses, and I dressed very formally, and all these people wore t-shirts and just not formal. I was a very formal person, and it was just very hard, and I was very sad and very depressed.
Did you make friends with other trainees at the time who helped you?
No.
And you helped them?
No, I made friends, but I didn't fit in to. There were a lot of very wealthy people, and lots of people who came from a lot of money and went to private school, and there was kind of this divide. There was a weird divide between people who had gone to public school, not only public like elementary, junior high, and high school, but public college, and then a lot of people who had gone to like much bigger schools and more private, and so there's this weird divide of people, and people just drank a lot of alcohol, and I mean I drank beer, but I was not a big drinker, and there were
Did you think that they were drinking a lot to excess, to just as a way to handle all of this?
No, because I didn't really know, I didn't think about that then because I didn't know that as a concept. I just remember thinking, wow, these people are wild, and I'm not
Wild
like,
and crazy.
well, they're just wild. They were very wild and just very different. I mean, and lots of people made fun of Oklahoma, and that was really hard.
Oh.
I had people make fun of, like, did you live in a teepee? And I'm like, you are college
I heard the same
educated
thing.
people. Like, this is ridiculous. And I was like, I can't believe you're asking me this. Like, do I have a horse? Did I live in a teepee? It's so, just indirectly racist. Because
Yes.
And I was very shocked that people who were coming to Africa had these very backwards views or very racist views of Native Americans and of people from a poor state who they'd never met anybody from Oklahoma. It was just very bizarre. I just could not believe that people would ask me. I was just mortified. I was and I was embarrassed for them. I guess I was super woke before woke was woke. Like, but I was just embarrassed that they, just because you're from California or you're from New York or you're from the East Coast doesn't mean you have a corner on the world. And to ask somebody if they lived in a teepee is just disgusting.
It is.
It's just rude to
I was asked that also.
Native Americans. It's just rude. It's just
So you considered
ignorant.
You considered yourself an outlier in that
I
group.
did, very much so, and but I mean, I had lots of friends. I just didn't fit in. I just never felt like I really fit in, and there were some of us who felt that way, but because I wasn't cool, I'm not a cool person, and there were lots of these people were real cool people, and it was just interesting, and so we got our villages, and I wanted in the business section we could do either.
Now you were going to be in business development.
Yes.
Okay, and did you have a good notion of what you would be teaching?
No
or
clue.
Doing?
No.
Okay, all right.
Zero clue. They had 2 tracks we could go on, ecotourism development or non-traditional exports like baskets or,
You mean
unfortunately.
developing an export business?
Yes, for non-traditional exports. Palm nuts, which is absolutely awful, but that was one of the things that.
You eat palm nuts, is that it?
Well, I think it was developing. Some were baskets, and there was this volunteer who had been in the north of Ghana, and she had gotten a contract with Pier 1 to provide these baskets called Bolgatanga baskets to Pier 1, and it was a really big thing. It was one of the biggest things that anyone in Peace Corps anywhere on a business side had ever done. It was huge, and Pier 1 still imports those baskets today, and you will find Bolgatanga baskets in Whole Foods. I found them here. You can find them all over the place, and she was kind of the one who really started some of that.
Wow.
So yes, that was very cool. But palm nuts were one. I don't really remember where the other things, but palm oil is a huge problem because of wildlife that is displaced because of farming palm nuts. But and I thought that was very strange that was one of the things we were doing, but okay.
Yeah.
But I wanted ecotourism development, and we had like a business person who was doing the ecotourism development. He had an NGO. He was British. I think he was British. And I went up to him after class and I said, this is what I want to do. Much like I said, I'm going to sub-Saharan Africa. I said, well, I want to do this and I don't want to do the other thing. This is what I want to do. And I don't want to be around a bunch of other volunteers, and I want to I want an experience where I am by myself, where I have to rely on myself, and where I'm not close to other volunteers. And I
you
asked
must
for
have
that.
had the expectation that this person could fix you up.
Well, I don't know. I just said that's what I wanted. I probably was, I don't know if I had that. He was part of choosing who was going to go out of our group, who was going to do what. And that I said that that's what I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
So,
How did he react to that?
okay, I mean, he didn't really, well, I can't tell you. Okay,
Yeah.
well, I'm just telling you that's what I want. And I want to be in a place that is not, that is remote. I don't want to be
Yeah.
around a bunch of volunteers. I didn't come here to hang out with Americans.
Right.
I came here to live in Ghana and know what that's like. But I liked hanging out with the Americans. I don't want to get anybody wrong. I really, that first 4 weeks, I really struggled, not feeling like I was really fitting in. And I didn't fit in, but it's okay.
But it was the other trainees that you felt that way about, not the Ghanaians.
No, not the Ghanaians. No. But we didn't really know that many Ghanaians because we were in a walled compound in Salt Pond, and we had some Ghanaian teachers, but it was mainly Americans. Our language teachers were Ghanaian.
Yeah.
And there was a Ghanaian nurse, but everybody else were Americans. The leader, the lady who did the training, the head trainer, she was American. Most everybody was American. So we didn't, the only interaction we got with Ghanaians in training was with our language teachers and some of the people who worked in the compound and going out to the bars.
Yeah.
But other than that, we didn't have much interaction. And that was probably what I was most disappointed in. I thought that was miserable because that's not what I joined Peace Corps for.
When we got to the country for training, we lived with families.
Yeah, we lived
That was great.
Yeah, we didn't live with families. We lived in a compound with each other. And my roommate was the person that I met on the plane that I went over and plopped next to. She was from South Dakota, and so she and I had a lot in common. We're, Midwest-ish. Neither one of us had grown up with wealthy families, and we both went to public university, and we had a lot in common. And she was a lot more wilder than me, but we got along really well, and we are still. She's one of my best friends to this day.
That's great.
So she and I were roommates, and we got our assignments, and I got an assignment to do ecotourism development. And I was very excited about that. It was a monkey sanctuary in the Brongahafo region of Ghana, and it was
Is that a jungle?
It was semi-deciduous rainforest, so the rainforest would obviously lose its leaves, and not all of them, but some of it. And that got announced to us, and then we went on we went to go stay where we were going to live, a home visit.
For how long?
A week. And we had to get there on our own. We had to figure it out, and there was a group of us who'd all been in this business group, and we were going up there together. And I had really struggled in language class, and we got out of that compound, and everything just got 20 million times better. I could speak the language. I could interact with people. It was fun. It was enjoyable. I was by far the best language speaker out of my group. I struggled in the class, but we got out there in the world and had to get there ourselves, and I could do it on my own. And
that's amazing.
It was. And I just didn't, I think it was a depressing place. Training was depressing.
Yeah.
It was not it was this artificial environment.
I thought training should be energizing you, not depressing
you. It was
you.
depressing me. I was very depressed. And we got out there, and I talked with people, and I'm a very jokey person, and I could joke around, and it was so fun. And we had to get, it was probably 10 hours to get to where we had to go, and I got up there, and I got to my village and I met the people I was going to live with, and it was wonderful. And the food was good because it wasn't mass produced.
You weren't taken out there by a Peace Corps person?
No, I had to get there
You
myself.
got there yourself. Okay.
Having not done any of that on my own.
And was there anybody to meet you where
No.
you went?
No, I just had to get there.
You got off the bus and you looked around?
It was a little trotro, so like a minivan that seats about 16 people. And we got a mini bus from Salt Pond to probably Cape Coast, and then in Cape Coast we took a bus to Kumasi, and then in Kumasi I took a bus to Nkranza, or not a bus, a mini van thing, van is what they're called, and then I just went to this very small. Nkranza is a very small town, but I was going to a much smaller town, and I had to go find where I was going, and
Yep, they don't give you an address, do they?
No, I just said I'm going to this.
Elmira.
I'm going to this town, and I got in the little taxi, and it was just a little tiny car, and there were like 5 of us in the back seat, which I'm not.
5 Peace Corps?
No. I didn't. I was.
That's what I was wondering.
Oh no, Ghanaians.
Okay.
The piece
Well, who were these Ghanaians with you?
People.
Unrelated to what you're doing?
No, yeah.
Oh, okay.
You're on public transportation. So from Salt Pond, there were some of us all going to Kumasi. And so it was Peace Corps people, but we were in public transportation with other Ghanaians who we have no relationship with.
Okay.
Public transport.
Got it.
And so then in Kumasi, we all kind of go our separate ways and have to, and that's when I was the one in the van giving the directions and doing all the talking, and they were like, well, but you couldn't talk. And I was like, well, I can now. It just came out. I was depressed.
What do you think happened?
I was depressed. I hated it.
And it lifted?
It lifted. As soon as I got out of that compound and on my own and some independence, I was joyfully happy. Didn't look back. I needed out of that little America that I had no interest in being in.
Yeah.
And I needed away from, I needed the experience of people, not Americans, but I'm still very good friends. We visit each other all the time. But the first 4 weeks, it was just depressing. It was depressing.
Well, I'll tell you, that strikes me as a very uncommon reaction that you had there. I would think that most Americans would be depressed when they got dumped out of an environment that they were comfortable in. But you were not ever comfortable.
I was never comfortable there. I was not comfortable at all. I didn't feel like I fit in. I felt like an outsider because I was from Oklahoma. I didn't grow up with money, and a lot of people I was in Peace Corps with their parents had a lot of money.
So you get to your town.
I get to my village, and I get out of this car.
What's the size of it?
My village I lived outside of a village that was like total probably 3,000 people between the 2 small villages.
Farming village?
Farming village, 2 farming villages. And they had this monkey sanctuary that they protected through. It was a forest area that had black and white pied colobus monkeys and Mona monkeys, and that they protected on their own through their traditional religion, because the monkeys were fetish, so they couldn't kill the monkeys. But as people became more Christian, and they were primarily Christians, there were some Muslims in town, but they were primarily Christian. I'd say probably 85% Christian, 15 out of the non-animists, and 15% Muslim, something like that. And the 15% is probably high. But they protected the forest with not only their traditional religion, but they also passed laws that you couldn't kill the monkeys, which was a very unique in all of sub-Saharan Africa, because most places were killing wildlife, and certainly in West Africa. there is not the history of conservation in West Africa like there is in East Africa or Southern Africa with, big game.
Mm-hmm.
But the culture is different, and if it moves, you kill it and you eat it. And but they had preserved this forest and preserved these monkeys, and so the monkeys were kind of lived in this semi-deciduous rainforest that was in between 7 communities. But these were the 2 bigger communities.
Did they derive any income from this?
Well, that was the whole point. The income was supposed to go to the community.
Where did the income come from?
Visitors, tourists.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. It was
okay.
it's called Boabing Fiema Monkey Sanctuary, and it was in a couple of guidebooks. It was real popular in German guidebooks for German tourists. It was in maybe Lonely Planet and Rough Guide as just a little blurb,
Mm-hmm.
and a majority of the tourists were American, Canadian, Germans, British, and French. And we had the Ghana Wildlife Service had 2 guides there who were posted there who would guide people around, and you got to see how the monkeys coexisted with the humans.
Before we explore that anymore, let's go back to the day you arrived.
Okay.
And
I don't know if I remember that, but
well, I hope you will, because where you left us, you've arrived, but I got the impression that you didn't know exactly where you were going to go.
I just knew that I was going to a guest house.
A guest house.
In this village.
And so you had to ask, where are the guest houses?
No, I went to it was like a little place where there's a van that takes people to this town whenever the van fills up. And I went and sat. I said, "Oh, hello, my name is Audrey. I'm going to this blah, blah, blah." I tried to do it as much in local language as I could. And then they were like, "Oh, we've heard of you, you're coming." And
oh, so
yeah, they knew I was, like, people knew, the driver knew, yeah, it was in advance. And this little bus went around to all these different villages and picked people up. So people knew I was coming. And I said, "Well, I'm going to the guest house." And they all knew where that was. And they dropped me off. And I got out.
Oh, okay.
And then there was, I think, my counterpart, who I was supposed to be teaching everything to. He was the caretaker of the guest house and his family. And the assemblyman of our town was there to greet me.
Lived there? Or?
No, the caretaker lived, there was a guest house and there was a caretaker's house that was built with UNDP money, United Nations Development Program money.
Okay.
And the caretaker lived in his little 1-bedroom house, and then the guest house was 6 bedrooms with a very large, what you would think would be like a conference room on the end, and they turned that conference room into where I was going to live. And I just got out, and they welcomed me, and we ate fufu, and it was good, and it wasn't horrible, and it didn't taste like, it wasn't awful.
Uh-huh.
And my counterpart and his wife were excellent cooks. And I was like, this is so much better than what I've been having. I was just so happy. I was so happy. I can't describe the level of happiness that I was. I was happy.
Because the depression just lifted like that.
The minute I got out of that compound and got to do some things on my own, the depression was gone.
Mm-hmm.
It was gone.
Oh, that's
and I could
terrific.
function. I wasn't like this loser who couldn't talk and couldn't do anything and couldn't say anything, and it was just, and I got to talk with people and visit, and that was wonderful.
Now you said you described somebody as your counterpart. What do you mean by that?
So our counterparts that was a formal word for the people we were supposed to be training to basically do our job. So no one really ever told me what my job was. It was very disorganized.
You're here to do a job, but you don't know what it is.
And you were here to do a job which was develop this for tourism.
Develop something that's already there, isn't it?
Yes.
For tourism.
Yes, but it was very, I mean, we had, we were, for the most part, We were all brand new college graduates.
Mm-hmm.
All business majors, but nobody knew anything about tourism. There was one guy, he had owned the first sports bar in Jamaica, and he was in our group. His name was Mickey, and he was 70 something.
Oh, that old? Wow.
He's 60, I'm thinking 77, but that he couldn't have
Good
been 70.
Lord.
I think he was 67, maybe
yeah,
70.
maybe.
But like,
Surely not 77.
no, he wasn't 77, but he was in his late 60s, if not early 70s.
Mm-hmm.
And so he had some business experience, but the rest of us had none.
Mm-hmm.
And they gave us these sites to help these people develop this for ecotourism. I'm not sure what my job really was. It was to develop this. I was supposed to go do some kind of survey and
The monkey refuge, right?
yes,
Is
and
that-
figure out what we needed for sustainable ecotourism development.
Well, I'm a little bit, I'm thinking it was already there, it was already developed.
It wasn't developed. There was a guest house, but they want it more developed. Like the local community.
Americans were visiting this place, weren't they?
Yes, Americans and Europeans primarily.
Okay. So it's doing all right. Was the idea that it's not doing all right?
No, it was not. No, it was not. There were no real coordinated efforts, and
To get people there.
no, not to get people there, just to manage it and run it. And we needed, people to learn to be on time.
Oh.
I had to train my counterpart how to interact with Westerners, how to,
Yeah.
how to feed people properly and how to clean dishes so that people wouldn't get sick, how to give tours to people, how to encourage the local community to want to continue to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Because local community we had a thatched roof pergola thing outside, and the local community had to kick in the money to rethatch the roof, and that's
Yeah.
really expensive, and there's only so many people. So there's lots of community resources going to this, but this needed to also benefit the community,
All right.
which I knew nothing about.
When you got there, did you ask for the books, the financial records? Let's see how you're doing?
Yes, and there weren't any, and we had to start with that.
That was what?
There were not any.
Oh, there weren't any.
They weren't
Okay.
really doing bookkeeping.
Uh-huh.
And that ended up being the bookkeeping was a huge problem. I mean, that ended up being, at the end, we found out some people were stealing money.
Mm.
My last night there.
After 2 years, you found out that people had been stealing money?
Mm-hmm.
What a way to go out. That's terrible.
It was terrible. It was really sad. But I didn't, I was very disappointed, but I did not have unrealistic expectations. I level set my expectations very soon when I got there. We visited, and I had a great visit, and I met these people, and it was I loved the people in my village. I had a really great time. But when I saw that some of the things that were happening, I mean, it was like teaching people how to have a tourist business from very basic, very basic things. And even getting somebody to do books and where the money went, and learning all of the different, there were all these different personalities. There was a man who kind of started the whole thing, and there was a management committee that was running it that were all elected or appointed by the community. But it was really learning how all of that worked, to not step on people's toes.
Because they won't come back if you alienate them.
No, and you have to make it
them.
work. Yes, and you have to make it work for everybody. And there was so much to be done, and it's community development, and that doesn't happen fast. And
No.
you can't just go in there being
A pushy American.
a pushy young American woman who they don't really, I mean, the culture doesn't say to like really value what this little white girl's telling you to do. And it took a lot of, really learning, getting to know the people.
A lot of patience.
A lot of patience.
Yeah.
But it was fun. It was an amazing time. It was great.
Did you do that the whole 2 years?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But getting back to the beginning of
Yes.
it, you had a staff there.
Mm-hmm.
And were they experienced staff?
Oh, it was just a caretaker and his wife. No, and their
That was
kids.
it?
That was it.
The caretaker and his wife.
Uh-huh.
But who led the? They'd come to see the monkeys. Who did that?
Those were two Ghana Wildlife Service guides, or what? They were not even guides. They were Ghana Wildlife Service workers who'd come from other parts of Ghana, and they were Ghana Wildlife Service. So that was a good job. They got paid a salary, but they got posted from different places in the world, or different places in Ghana, to live in this itty bitty tiny village, which I'm sure they didn't like much. But they're very nice, and they gave the tours.
And they would stay there for a few weeks, or
For forever. They were there the whole 2 years I was there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
They were posted there. That was their post.
Did you get along with them?
Yes, I got along with everybody. There's not really anybody I didn't get along with. Yeah, they were great.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was a management committee of there was one woman and like 4 men. And they kind of managed everything.
What does that mean? Can you give me some examples?
What does that mean? I don't know what that means, because there wasn't really a whole lot of management.
But anyway, it existed.
It existed, and they were very big people in the town.
Yeah. They were influential.
They were influential people. One was a teacher. One was the assemblyman who got killed later. He was murdered. Not while I was there.
Not while you were there?
No. He was...
Afterward?
Afterwards. Yeah, he was one of my best friends. And he was the local assemblyman. He got murdered, some political something, and they killed him and then made it look like a motorcycle accident. And they still, to this day, don't know who killed him.
Oh, my. Huh.
He was one of my dear, I mean, I loved him very much, cared about him very much. We were
Must
very,
have been
very...
terrible news when you got it.
It was horrible news, but it's more horrible for his family and him, and just the community to have something like that happen in such a small community.
Did it have anything to do with the refuge?
No.
Okay.
It was politics. He was into politics. It was something political. It was a change of government, something, and I don't know, and I've had conversations with some people from my village since then, and they don't really know what was going on. So who knows? But he was there.
Was the refuge subject of politics?
No, not particularly.
Okay, that's good.
It was very, people were very supportive, and it was a sense of pride, because, it was...
They were doing something they wanted to do.
Yeah, it was
Protecting
the community started it, and that was what was very unique about it. And the man in the community who started it was now not in the management committee. He was not involved anymore, and so there was some weird stuff going on about that. But but yeah, no, you can't go in a community like that and say, "Give me your books." That's not going to work.
They didn't have any, you said.
No, they didn't. They had maybe some things that they wrote down, but they didn't really keep books.
So did you, in the beginning, say, let's start at the beginning and go from here?
I don't,
or not?
uh,
Some people would just come in there and get to know everybody, and then
I mean, I went to management committee meetings, and they were very much like, well, you're going to leave. We know you're going to leave. The last volunteer, she came here, and she only stayed a few months because she went and got married. She didn't
Oh, there
like,
was a Peace Corps volunteer in your little town
there had been
before
previous.
you
Yes,
got there.
yes.
But was gone by the time
She
you
only
got
stayed, no, she only stayed like 3 months.
Oh,
And
doing what you
yes,
did?
and
Okay.
because she went to go get married, she decided she didn't want to stay. You're not going to stay. You're not going to stay. You're not going to stay. And I said, well, okay. We're not going to work with you because you're not going to stay. And I was like, okay, well, we'll just get to know each other then because I'm going to stay. And they're like, you're not staying. I'm like, I'm staying. And
Did you confront any
No.
one of them directly and say, listen, I find that
No.
somewhat insulting that you
No.
tell me what I'm going to do based on. You
no, that's not the way to do it. I just was myself. And I just visited and was friendly and talked to people and went to farm with people, and I taught a school. I taught science like at one of the local schools for a
How'd
little
that
while.
happen?
They needed a teacher, so I went and volunteered. But I mean, I just volunteered to do it. But it wasn't for very long.
Did you give the impression to the community that you were there to help, and if you need my help, I'll try?
I don't know. I gave the impression to the community that I was there and going to help. And if they didn't want to work with me, that's fine. I was going to live there, and we're just going to I was just going to be a part of their community. So I went to all the funerals, and that's real big in Ghana, funerals. I would go to funerals. I would go drink beer with people. I would go drink Pito, which is local beer. I drink palm wine.
Mm-hmm.
I'd go play. I'd go with the women and wash clothes. All the kids around me, we played in the yard. I had a telescope. I let them look at my telescope.
No. Huh.
We hung out, read books. I just hung out.
Yeah.
I just
think
like,
that's
okay.
great.
I let people ride my bike. I made dinner we would make dinner, and I let them try pasta, and they hated it. I just hung out.
Yeah.
I just lived there.
Did any of them have questions to you about your riches
Yes.
and how they might get some of them, or how they might become rich like you?
I'm not really. I don't know if they viewed me as rich.
You've got all these things that they don't have.
Yeah, but I don't think they viewed me as having stuff. But they knew I didn't have a car. They knew I took public transportation. They knew I didn't.
But they didn't know that about how you live in the U.S.
Well, we talked about it.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, and they would say, okay, I'm going to come live in America. And I was like, okay, well, let's talk about how much that's going to cost.
Mm-hmm.
And I did lots of educating people on, okay, this is how much the house is. And they're like, nope, that's not how much a house can be. And I'm like, well, that is how much it is. And then you have to pay an electric bill. What? Because we didn't have electricity or running water. You have to pay for the water. You have to pay for water, yes. Because we had a borehole, but and the borehole was supposed to only be for me, and I just said, well, we're not doing that. We're sharing the water with other people.
Sure.
Because that's what we're doing. And
Who did the borehole? The community or?
UNDP. The UNDP
Okay.
put about $50,000, which at the time was a lot. It's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And
In this little community.
because it was a tourist site, and tourists need
Oh,
a place
yeah,
to
yeah,
stay
of course.
because it's not a place you can get to and leave in the same day. And they used to have people stay in people's homes, but that got a little bit too. It was not good for the local community. When you have a bunch of wealthy tourists and women who don't know how to act in, not only women, but men too, but they don't know how to act in a very conservative community, you can really poison the community by having strong Western influences of lots of drinking and smoking weed and, sexual things happen.
Yeah.
It's not
yeah.
great for a conservative community. So,
But that's how you get the money. That's where the money is, right?
well, yeah, so that's why they had a guest house that was outside of the community. So, and the visitors would be more,
You're in the guest house.
well, but there were 6 rooms in the guest house. I'm in a conference room in the guest house.
Oh, so Americans would be staying with you in
Not
the
with
guest
me. They would stay in the guest house. And in fact, I didn't let any of the visitors into my room, and I didn't really talk with that many of the visitors.
house? Okay.
I did not want to visit with them. That's not what I was there for. And that's not the... there are some exceptions to that, but that's not why I was there. And I didn't
Right.
want to have that be... At first, they tried to push all the visitors on me. And there was like not that many visitors, like maybe a couple of visitors a week. I mean, it's not... The guest house was never full.
They're not streaming in.
No. Because it's a very remote place. It's hard to get to, and like I said, you can't get there and get out in the same day. It's not possible.
Okay.
Because there's just not that much transport to get you back out. But like they knew I was wealthy to them, kind of, but they knew I wasn't wealthy.
Yeah.
Because we talked about it. I'm like, this is not my bike. I don't own this bike. But I let everybody use it. We weren't supposed to. And I was like, well, you can use it because I don't care. And of course it got
Sure.
broken and whatever. And then I had a water filter. And I quit using the water filter. And I just used the borehole water. And I let whoever wanted to, I said, we're going to
I did the same thing because I thought it was insulting
Yes.
to the family that I lived with.
Yes. Well, I mean, I lived with a family, but I let the people in the community use it. If you came and wanted to use it, I let you use it. I mean, we're not going to do that. We're not going to put me on a pedestal. And not everybody gets to, that's part of the benefit of having this in your community.
Well, I certainly paid the price because I had the runs for almost 2 years.
Oh.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because I drank the water.
Oh, I had borehole water, so it came up through, 200 feet of rock, so it was fine to drink. If I got sick, it was from food, not from my water.
Okay.
My water was fine. And so I shared it with other people when they came. I didn't tell anybody no. I just felt like that was not okay. And I was told that I was going to have to say no. Peace Corps said, well, you can't let people ride your bike, and this is your water source, and you need to not share it. And I was like, yeah, well, I'm sharing it. Like, this is ridiculous.
Did Peace Corps people show up every once in a while to check you out? Or to see what you need or how you're doing? Anything like that?
We had what were called PCVLs, so Peace Corps volunteer leaders who were third-year extending
Oh, yeah.
people, and
Heard of them.
they stayed in Kumasi, and they had a big Land Cruiser, and I think one guy came up once, and he and I are still friends to this day. He lives in Santa Fe. He came up once, and we got to be really good friends, and we just hung out. It was, and then the guy who was after him, he came up maybe once or twice, but I didn't really need any help. I didn't need anything. I had everything I needed.
And they understood that.
Yeah, I was very independent. I mean, very independent. I just didn't need anything.
Okay.
I had everything I needed. I mean, I had a family that I lived with, basically. And if I needed anything, they helped me.
Can you describe that family for us?
There was, they were Alfred and Bee, and they were Seventh-day Adventists, which was very strange because there's not that many in Ghana. Mm-hmm. And they had an older daughter named Eva, and she was probably... She was a teenager. She was probably 17 or 18 when I got there. Then they had another daughter, Vida, who was probably 16. Then they had a son, Seth, and he was probably 10. And then they had a daughter, Audrey, and that means she was her day name. She was born on Monday. She was deaf.
Deaf?
Deaf, and she was about 7 or 8. And then B had a younger brother who was the same age as her son Seth. Her brother was the same age. And so he kind of lived with them too. Eva, I don't know where Eva was. She must have been at school. Maybe she was at school. I don't remember. But it was mainly the brother. His name was Kofi. So it was the uncle of the kids. So B's brother. So the kid, B and Alfred's kids. It was the 2 younger ones, Kofi and Audra, and Seth and Audra, who were like 8 and 10, or maybe 9 and 12. I don't know. They were young. He wasn't 12. He was still like in little kids school. So we'll say 7 and 9.
Okay.
Something like that. Maybe a little bit older. And then Kofi, who was their uncle.
And you got along with all of them?
Oh my God, yes. I still talk to Seth on Facebook. But yes, no, we got, and we ate as a family.
Did they do the cooking?
They did the cooking.
Did you ever do the cooking?
I cooked some pasta and they hated it. And they said it was disgusting. But I would buy the meat. They would do the cooking, and I would buy the meat and pay for ingredients.
Do you pay for your lodging too?
No. Well, Peace Corps did.
Peace Corps did.
Peace Corps paid. Actually, Peace Corps didn't pay for it. The community had to give up something in order to have you be there. And so the community gave up that conference room that I basically lived in.
What was the size of the conference room? Like this right here?
Oh, it was
your
bigger
office
than this.
here?
No, it was probably, it was probably 25 feet by 25 feet. It was a big room.
Oh, okay.
It was a
big room. Yeah.
And I had a little locally made couch with, it's called poor man's cloth. It had, it was cloth, a bunch of different cloth pieces all kind of put together, sewn together. And I had a couch and 2 chairs, and then I had a bookshelf in the middle that separated my room. Then I had a foam mattress on the ground that I slept on. And then my clothes I just kept in a suitcase.
Were mosquitoes a problem?
Not really. I mean, I took mefloquine.
You didn't have a mosquito net?
I did, but I didn't use it because there was no place to hang it. And I didn't use it. But I had screens on my windows.
Oh, you did? You had screens on your windows?
It was required. It was required by Peace Corps. We had these little slatted windows, and it was windows all the way around. And I had screens on my windows, and we took Lariam or mefloquine as anti-malaria medication.
You didn't ever get malaria?
I did not.
Did you get any serious illness while you were there?
I had Shigella.
Oh, like the precursor, or no? Well, not.
Well, Shigella is food poisoning, but it's pretty bad. It was very bad. I had Shigella, E. coli, all the food poisonings. I had all that, and I got in a bus wreck and broke my collarbone and dislocated my shoulder and lacerated my arm.
Who were you treated by?
A hospital in Kranza.
How far is that?
No, Techiman. I don't know the miles. It was far. I mean, it would take like 3 hours to get there. I had a boyfriend who was a Peace Corps volunteer in Cantampo, which is considered the north of the middle part of the country. It's really the north. It's the north of Ghana, and he was a teacher. He taught science, and Cantampo is a big town. And I was coming back from his house, and the small van driver was dodging potholes, and he overturned and we flipped.
Wow.
The vehicle flipped and then crashed into a rock wall, and I was on the bottom. And I went out of the vehicle. My head went out and broke the glass, and then
Your head broke the glass?
and then when my head, I had a polo hat. It was a white polo hat with a yellow polo horse on it. And when I hit the glass, I went out of the van, and then we hit like this big rock wall, and it was like a ravine, and that force of that threw me back in, but that's when I broke my collarbone and dislocated my shoulder. And I was this is the van and I'm sitting here. Well, I ended up here on the very bottom of all the people.
Gosh.
And they were afraid to touch me or get me out. And I had to pull myself up over all the chairs, because this chair sits like 4 people. Pull myself up and throw myself out. And I was covered in mud and blood. And
gosh.
the driver lost all of his arm. I mean, you could see bone and sinew hanging off from here to here.
They have to amputate it?
I don't know what they did, honest. I don't know what they did. I mean, I didn't. We got in another. I was freaking out, and I knew I was gonna live, but I was really hurt, and it was really scary.
A lot of pain.
Very, very painful. And then they got us this other van, and we were driving, and I couldn't even speak local language. I couldn't do anything. I just was like, I broke my collarbone, and something's wrong, and it really hurts. And I looked over at the driver. He was sitting next to me, and that's when I saw basically all the flesh and muscle and everything was gone. It was just bones.
Horrible.
With stuff hanging off of it. And I was like, oh my God, he could die from infection. He's going to probably have to have his arm cut off. I'm going to be just fine. I'll be fine. And then they took me to the hospital, and there were some doctors from the Netherlands and from Denmark. And they were trying to treat me first, and I was like, absolutely not. You get him first. And I just refused. I was like, you can't do this. And I went inside, and I stood up against a wall, and I passed out. And I remember passing out and sliding down the wall. And then I remember I'm allergic to penicillin. I didn't have anything on that said I was allergic to penicillin, and they were really keen on giving everybody a penicillin shot.
Sure.
And I slid down that wall, and I could hear all the voices, and I just was telling myself, you have to wake up, you have to wake up, you have to wake up. And I woke up, and they put me, this doctor was talking to me, and she was like, what happened? And I told her what happened, and they said, well, we've got to treat you. And I said, okay. But I mean, I was covered in mud and blood. And they took me to this like room, and it was a big room where there was all patients, men, women, doesn't matter. And in a Ghanaian hospital, there's not nurses to take care of you. You have to have family come in and take care of you and feed you and get you to the bathroom. And they said, where's your family? And I was like, I don't have any family. My people in my village live here, and I was traveling from Kintampo. They said, okay, so we've got to get you, we have to have an x-ray. And I said, okay. So they cut my t-shirt off of me. And it was a really awesome t-shirt that I had gotten from, it was a Rotary t-shirt that my postmaster had given to me, because I helped my postmaster sort the mail, because I wanted my mail, and for a long time the mail would just sit there in bags for weeks, and my mail was like Christmas. And so I went to the postmaster at this bigger town, and I said, you were so busy, I need to help you sort the mail because you were so busy. So I went in twice a week and sorted mail for him.
That was nice. Very nice.
And
so you were not sending emails?
No, there was no such thing as email.
None of that? I can't remember
No,
exactly when
no
it
email.
all started.
No, not emails. No, we had no email.
So snail mail all the way.
Yes, all letters. And my parents would write me, and my grandparents would write me, and friends would write me.
How about telephone calls?
I called, there was a communication center in this bigger town, and I would go and call home once every couple of weeks.
That's good.
So
that's good.
But lots of letters. So anyway, they cut this really cool T-shirt off, and I was in my bra, and then they cut my bra off. And then
why should you be any different?
Well, right. And then the whole place was just staring at me, and I think I had tears just rolling down my face. And then they go to cut my skirt off, and I had a slip on, and I didn't have any underwear on because it was hot. And they go to cut the slip off, and I'm like, can you please not cut that off? And they were like, why? And then they were just mortified. I was like, it's hot, and I don't want to get an infection, so I don't always wear underwear. And they cut that off, and I was standing completely naked in this. There were probably 50 patients in bed, and there were 50 eyes just staring at me.
Sure. Would you describe this as the low moment of your 2 years?
No. The low moment was that training. No, I was still happier than the training. I was happy to be alive. I was grateful. I was so happy I was alive.
Okay.
It was embarrassing, but it didn't bother me. I mean, it just did, it was means to an end. And there was some kid running around the hospital, and I gave him some money to go buy some cloths so I could wrap up in a cloth bottom and a wrap. And I gave him some money to go get some cloths because my arm was dislocated and broken. And I couldn't there was no way it was going to go in a shirt.
Yeah.
So they said, don't you have somebody to take care of you? And I wrote a note to my boyfriend. He was from Ohio. He was a teacher at this school that was like an hour and a half away.
From where you lived?
Yeah, no, from where I was in the hospital.
Oh, okay.
I was in a big town compared to where I lived. And I wrote a note on a piece of notebook paper that said, I've been in a bus wreck, I'm hurt, I need you to come because I'm going to have to get help getting to a crop. And I found some boy, and I said, go put this on the Trotro, those are the minibuses, and give it to teacher Kwame Scott at the secondary school.
And he got it?
He got it. And he showed up hours and hours and hours later, and he was just like, oh! He was so just mortified. And
Did you know him from training? Or?
No, I met him. No, he was a teacher, so he wasn't in training with us. I met him. We were in this region called the Brongahafo region, and there were some teachers. Again, I was very remote, and we had a language training maybe, and so the people in our region all went to some training. It was teachers and the business, any other volunteer, but and there were only 2 of us who were not teachers in the whole region. Everybody else was teachers. So we met there, and we were both probably the best ones at our language by far. We were heads and tails, and he and I kind of bonded over that. We both were very good at our language, and we both loved being in Ghana.
So you'd see one another every once in a while, even though he lived.
Yeah, we wrote letters.
Way.
Yeah, he lived a long way. We wrote letters to each other, and we'd visit like once a month. I'd go visit him. He'd come visit me.
Did you think that you'd get married?
We did. I think we thought that. Yes, we did.
At the time.
I wasn't really serious about getting married.
No. Was he?
So, I think he was more serious than I was. I wasn't particularly. I mean, I wasn't gonna commit to getting married. I mean, I loved him and cared about him, and we did try to have a relationship when we got back, but it was just 2 very different people in very different directions. But we are still friends to this day. I mean,
Oh, that's neat.
We talk, and he's married and I'm married, and my husband has met his wife, and we've gone and visited them, and
yeah.
We stay in contact. He's a very dear friend, very dear friend. He lives in Albuquerque.
Well, he certainly saw you at one of your most vulnerable
Oh, he
points
did. He did.
of your life.
And so he showed up, and I left, and we stayed at some American guy's house who everybody thought he was CIA. Somehow they got a message to that guy in the town, and he sent his wife to come get me, and they let me stay in his compound for the night. And Peace Corps, I called Peace Corps to tell them I got in a wreck and they were going to send a car to come get me, and I was like, I don't want to be in a little tiny car. It wasn't a car, it was a Land Cruiser, Toyota Land Cruiser, but to me that was tiny. I wanted to be in a big bus or nothing else because I was very scared of being on the roads. I was petrified. I was definitely traumatized.
Yeah.
And I said, no, don't come get me, and I convinced them that I was fine, but I was not fine. I was mentally not fine. I was a mess. And we stayed the night at that house, and this American guy's wife, gave me a sponge bath to get the blood and the mud and the dirt off of me. I did have to use the bathroom, it was a Turkish toilet, and it was covered.
What's that? I don't know what that is.
It's just a white porcelain piece that sits on the ground over a hole, and it's got place for your feet. But the bathroom in the hospital was covered in feces. There was not a place
Good Lord.
you could step that didn't have feces. I mean, it was covered in feces.
In the hospital?
In the hospital.
That's horrible.
It was horrible.
There's no excuse
And I
for
had
that.
also had I had fallen into, about a month before that, I had fallen into a open sewer and had hit my leg on the corner of a sewage thing, and it opened an artery up, and it was like spewing out blood. And so I had a big hole in my leg, and I had kept it from getting infected. And I had to go to the bathroom in this hospital with this open wound it was just
Wow.
it was covered in
Horrible.
feces. Covered in urine and feces everywhere, and flies. It's nasty. That was a hospital bathroom that I had to use after my accident. So they did an x-ray, and they're like, oh, your collarbone's broken. I was like, really? And we joked around, and they sewed up my arm, and it ended up getting horribly infected, and I got gangrene. And I had a sling made out of gauze. And we traveled from Techiman to Sunyani, Sunyani to Kumasi, all on big buses, Kumasi to Accra, and I bought like a whole row of seats so I could not have to sit by anybody. And it was so painful, because there were no pain meds. I took ibuprofen. They wanted to give me morphine. I said no, because I didn't want to be out of it. I needed to be in control and know what was happening. And I drove to the Peace Corps, knew I was coming, and I got there, and I walked in, and apparently I looked pretty awful because it was the med unit in Accra at the Peace Corps place. And I walked in, and everybody's eyes were...
Yeah. Oh, look what the cat drug in.
Exactly. The cat did drag it in. And I they got me an appointment at a decent hospital. This was in Accra. And I got a figure 8 brace, but they made me stay there because my arm was infected and my arm was starting to rot off. It was just really awful. It was really bad.
You must have been thinking somewhere along the line here about getting the hell out.
No.
No?
No.
Really?
No. I just wanted to go back to my village. That was my home.
But you're all messed up.
You could be messed up here. No, it's fine. I just wanted to go back. And I wrote them a note like, I've been in a bus wreck. I'm going to Accra. We had no phones, and I put the note on a bus, and I'm coming back. Don't worry, I'll be back. But I just don't know when yet. And I think I stayed in the med unit for about a week. They made me stay. And then they let me go back, but I couldn't carry anything because I couldn't lift anything.
Yeah.
And I don't know how I don't know how I got home because I had a bag. I don't know how I carried it. I think I probably from bus station to bus station, got somebody to help me carry my stuff.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't lift anything.
How long did it take you to get back to where you had some semblance of being normal?
I wore that figure 8 brace for 3 months, I think. And I couldn't take a shower or a bath, so I had long hair, so I got my hair cut off short. And when I went home, the people I lived with washed my hair for me. And I couldn't clean under my underarms because I had a figure 8 brace on, and so
Yeah.
it really, really stunk. It was really gross because it's in Ghana and it's like 95 degrees every day and hot and humid.
And that's year-round, pretty much?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean,
Oh,
it changes.
So
Sometimes
there's not a dry season, wet season?
There's a dry and wet season, but it stays pretty hot. I mean, it gets cold, but the days are hot. But it was hot.
Yeah.
And I had to wear a dress I wore the same dress because I couldn't get anything over my head because I couldn't lift my arm because it had been dislocated. And my shoulder had been dislocated. So I wore a button-up dress, and I would try to button it, but my counterpart and his wife would just help me get dressed, and the kids would help me get dressed.
Mm.
And they would wash my hair, and then after I got it off, we had a party, and we bought a chicken, and they killed the chicken, and we had fufu and groundnut soup with chicken, which was my favorite. And we got some kerosene, and we made a big bonfire, and we burned the figure 8 brace.
Mm. It sounds like a good idea.
It was a good party.
Also, it sounds like the toughest job you'll ever love.
It was. It was. I loved it. It was great. I'd go do it again if I could. It's fantastic.
What do you think your main accomplishments were?
My main accomplishment, and probably I would say for my life, this is my main accomplishment. I have had no greater accomplishment than this, but Audrey, the little girl who was my caretaker, or pardon me, my counterpart's daughter, who was deaf.
Yeah.
We had a lot of volunteers there were deaf schools in every region of Ghana.
There were?
There were.
Wow.
So clearly some big important person had a child who was deaf.
Yeah.
And she was the youngest, and she didn't speak. She squealed, and she didn't know sign language. She had her own home sign, but she had absolutely no way of caring for herself once her parents were dead. And I said, we have to get her in school. And they fought with me. No, you don't understand.
Who fought with you?
My counterpart and his wife. Not mean fighting, but they just didn't agree. But like, no, we will take care of her. I'm like, you can't take care of her. What happens when you get older and you can't take care of her? What will you do?
Yeah.
What will happen? She's got to be able to speak. She's got to be able to sign. She deserves a husband of her own. She deserves, if she wants to have kids, but she's got to be able to communicate with others and not just squeal. If something happens to her, she needs to be able to tell people what's wrong.
Absolutely.
I mean, she might not speak, but she's got to be able to sign, and she deserves to have her brain stimulated just like all these other kids. Well, we can't afford it. Well, I'll pay for it then. Okay, I'll pay for it. Because it's no money. It was nothing. And they're like, no, we can't do this. And I'm like, we've got to do it. And I finally convinced them to get her evaluated. And I said, I'll pay for the evaluation. And it was maybe $100. She had to go get this hearing test. And I took her to Kumasi by myself, and to go get this hearing test that was a prerequisite to applying to this school. And we were in a taxi, and she got out of the taxi, and then I'm trying to get out, and the taxi driver drove off in one of the busiest cities in Africa. And I'm screaming at him, and I just throw some money at him, and I jump out, and I have to go find this black kid in a sea of black people. And luckily, thank God, she stayed in the one place. And she's never been to a big town. I mean, this is a big city, millions of people. And she luckily was smart enough to stay on the corner, and I ran back to her, and I'm like bawling and crying.
Wow.
It was so stressful. But anyway, we go get her the test, and it says what's wrong with her. and which I don't remember what it was, but I mean, she had zero hearing. She could not hear a thing, no ability to hear.
So a hearing aid would not help?
No, a hearing aid was not going to work. There was nothing to do to fix her.
So sign's the only thing?
Sign is the only thing. So I got her into this school, the Brongahafo School for the Deaf in Betcham, Brongahafo, and I paid for her school, and I paid for her school uniforms, and that was probably the second year that I was there. And she went off to school, and she learned a trade. She learned how to sew, and she learned sign language, and she got a community with other deaf people.
Great.
And she lives with her sister Vida, and but she can take care of herself. And that's probably the biggest accomplishment of my life.
You saved her life for sure. Oh, that's terrific.
Mm-hmm. And if I accomplished anything, that's what I accomplished.
Boy, and how.
So
Congratulations.
thanks.
That is wonderful.
I just worked on them, but that we were family. They are my family, and we just I was like, we've got to send her to school. We've got to send her to school. No. She's the youngest. She's going to take care of us. And I'm like, she can't. And they listened. I listened to them.
Yeah.
And they listened to me, and we just were family, and we shared. And it's because of making that relationship and not demanding the first thing you go in. But
now
yeah.
let me ask.
And then the important thing was sorry to interrupt, they found the importance of it on their own after she went, and they ended up paying for it after I was gone.
Oh, great. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Glad they woke up.
Yeah. Well, they didn't know. They're uneducated.
How about the refuge now? Did it improve over the 2 years that you were there?
Did it improve? We built a tourist information center while I was there. That was just really, building something was really important. It's not growing in size because there's just no place for it to grow.
Mm-hmm.
But
what about popularity?
it is certainly, I don't know. We didn't work on that. That was not something we worked on. That was not, we needed to get funded.
Increasing the business.
Increasing the business was not my goal. My goal was getting my counterpart to understand Westerners, to understand how to talk to Westerners, to understand what they want, to understand they might be demanding, but they're not. That's just to get them to understand to clean dishes properly.
Yeah.
To offer different kinds of food, to have pasta and rice on hand, to different things so they could care for people when people came. That was what I made my goal to be, and certainly we accomplished that.
Well, let's see. When you were getting toward the end of your Peace Corps service, what did you have in mind?
What do you mean?
Well, you're not going to live here forever, so what are you going to do?
I didn't know. I didn't really know. I had no idea. I thought about the foreign service. I had the boyfriend. We didn't know how that was going to work or not work. He left before me.
What about now? Earlier you told me you were thinking about medical school or law school.
I still was thinking.
And then medical school was out. So
it was out, but while I was there during my experience, I was like, well, maybe I'll go back and do the science and do med school. I didn't know. There was like a lot of things floating around in my head. I wanted to extend a third year, but I had a wisdom tooth that was coming in and coming out and was getting infected, and I knew that was not going to probably happen. I had the opportunity to extend, but I didn't because I had to go get that wisdom tooth out as soon as I got home. I didn't really know. Med school was an option. Law school was an option. Foreign service was an option.
Mm-hmm.
I was going back to Oklahoma, but I thought about maybe moving to DC. I didn't really know. I didn't really have much direction.
Okay. So what did you do?
So I came back, and the boyfriend and I had Christmas together. Maybe I think I came back after Thanksgiving. I went to Spain and Portugal with some volunteers, 3 other volunteers.
What volunteers?
Peace Corps volunteers.
Oh.
We left together and we went to Spain and Portugal together.
On the way back?
On the way back.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
And the boyfriend had gone to Kilimanjaro with some of his people, and they hiked Kilimanjaro, so that was really cool.
Oh, yeah.
But nobody
cool.
I knew wanted to do that. And I came home, and it was winter, and I had Christmas, and the boyfriend and I spent time together, and we kind of tried to decide what we were going to do. And we just wasn't really working. You know, he wanted to come to Oklahoma, and that was like too much pressure for me, and I broke up with him and said, no, we're not, you don't need to come to Oklahoma because I don't think you'll like it here, and you want to go do something different. You need to go do what you want to do, and don't come to Oklahoma. That's too much pressure for either one of us. And I had to get a job. And so I didn't know what to do, so I went to a job fair at OU. And when I left OU, you put all your physical resume into these like envelopes, and the person wherever you were going to interview got the physical resume. So I go to that's how it was when I left in 97. This was now 2000. I come back and it's email, and I didn't know what email was. I was so scared about email. And you have to submit things electronically, and it was just very scary.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I applied for a job with the Federal Reserve Bank of Kansas City, the Oklahoma City branch. And I applied for a job with the Oklahoma Tourism Commission. And I applied for a job with Tinker, doing logistics, because I really didn't know what I wanted to do, and I knew that but I had to have a job because I didn't have any money. And so I interviewed, and I interviewed at some other places. I interviewed with the Department of Environmental Quality for a job.
In Oklahoma City.
In Oklahoma City, yes.
Yeah.
And I got a call back for the Federal Reserve Bank of Kansas City. And then I got another call back, and then I got an offer to be a business analyst at the Federal Reserve Bank of Kansas City, and that was a very prestigious job. And so I did that.
You took that job.
I took that job. And then I got a call back later to do the tourism thing. And I went, and I got an offer, I think, for the logistics, but it was logistics, military logistics, and working on doing logistics for military things and bombers, and that didn't really quite fit with my thought process. So I took the job with the Kansas City Federal Reserve Bank, which is just down the street from here. And
you didn't move to Kansas City?
no, it's the Oklahoma City branch. There was they did check processing and cash processing, and my first job was in facilities management as an analyst. It was a management career path. The idea was to eventually become one of the heads of the Federal Reserve Bank. That was the idea, of a management training program within the districts of the Federal Reserve.
Yeah.
And I did that, and they had a tuition reimbursement program, and I decided I really don't want to do this. This is really boring and not what I want to do, and so I'll just go to law school. So I went to law school at OCU at night. And
when was this? What year?
2001.
All right.
And so I worked about 50 or 60 hours a week, and then I went to law school at night. And my bosses at the Federal Reserve Bank were not happy that I was going to law school. They said that is not showing that you are committed to the Federal Reserve System. And
You're right.
And I know I did not say. I said, well, I mean, a law degree is very useful, and I had no intention of practicing law. But I wanted a degree. And then I also actually went to go to OU and see what I would need to do to go to med school, because that's really, really, really what I wanted to do. But it was going to require going back to school full time, and I had a house and a car payment and all these things. I didn't know how I was going to afford it.
Yeah.
So I said, well, I'm not going to do that. So I went to law school, and I was always getting in trouble because I was going to law school and I was just not being serious about the Fed. And I just said, well, I mean, a law degree is just very useful. So every review I had, oh, you're doing great, but this law school thing's a problem. And then it turned out that we were going to lose our business at the Federal Reserve Bank of Kansas City, Oklahoma City branch, that they were going to stop operations there. And I was like, well, it turns out that law degree is not such a bad idea. And I was in management by that time, and I was responsible for shutting down a department of people, over 50 people on a day and night shift, their average tenure was 23 years.
Oh, wow.
And they were all losing their jobs, and they were all overpaid for what they were doing. And I had to shut that down, and I ended up having to I was supposed to graduate in 4 years, but it ended up taking me 4.5 years to graduate from law school. And I ended up graduating like 2 days after everybody got fired and laid off. That was really depressing.
Oh, yeah.
Then they made me stay. I offered to leave early. Then they made me stay. And then I was going to take the bar, and I had to work through taking the bar. And then I went to my boss, and I was like, look, I have to go. This is not where I'm going to be working, because all our jobs are going away. And I negotiated working part-time so I could study during the afternoon. And then I took the bar, passed the bar. And then I didn't know what I was going to do. I had all these ideas when I was young about what I was going to do, but I kind of fell into everything I've done.
Yeah.
And then I went and worked for a law firm doing administration, because I didn't really want to practice law. And then I hated that. And then I went to work for MidFirst Bank, where my former boss at the Fed was working. And I did compliance work, and it was a great place to work. I love MidFirst Bank. It's a wonderful organization. My job was a little bit boring. And a friend of mine named Chris Reeser, who was an attorney who I'd gone to law school with, had a practice right across the street at 500 North Walker. And he said, can you help me out? I need some help. And I said, okay, sure. And so I kind of helped him on the side write some briefs. And I was like, ooh, this is kind of fun. I kind of like this. And he convinced me to quit my job. And so I quit my job, and I took a second mortgage, I took a second mortgage out of my house. So I had some money to live off of, and went practice law with him across the street at 500 North Walker. And then he left and started dating somebody, and got married and left me high and dry. And I had no practice, and luckily the people I practiced with gave me some cases, and I started practicing law.
Oh.
And then years later, he and I got married. So there you go.
Okay. That's maybe a good place to end right now.
Very
I think
good.
this has been very, very interesting.
Well, thank you.
Yes.